Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. As always, I'm joined by Dom.
Happy Twinkie Day.
Happy Twinkie Day. And surprise, back-to-back weeks, we're joined by Chris, a.k.a. Topher Nunes. How's it going, Chris?
Great. I kind of feel like the Chicago Bulls of The Last Dance.
Going back-to-back.
Going
So
back
we
to back.
originally had a different guest set, but then this Xbox stuff got announced, and our guest that we previously had booked was more of a PlayStation person, and it was actually pretty cool because they reached out to me and they were like, hey, maybe you want to get somebody with better insight. They're like, I could talk about this stuff, but so that was really nice. So we hit up Chris and we're like, hey, you want to come back again next week? And you're like, I'm home, might as well. Nothing else to do.
Well,
So yeah, today we're going to be covering the Xbox Series X first look event. But before that, we have a couple of announcements to go through. So first off, we had Geoff Keighley's Summer of Gaming be announced. And this has kind of been confusing for people from what I've seen online, and people don't kind of understand what it is. Some people interpret it as it's supposed to be like Geoff hosting this stuff and it kind of being centered on, when you see the event, they're like, this is Summer of Gaming. Whereas it actually is more of like a blanket encompassing all of the events, right? So it's kind of like a hub for you to get updated and notified when these events are happening. And it's a singular location where you can be aware of all of the happenings in the game industry, right? So that's been kind of weird. I don't know if you guys kind of picked that up right away or if it took a little bit of explaining for the Summer of Gaming. Like when they announced that Geoff Keighley was doing this, what was your initial reaction, Chris?
my initial reaction was he's trying to get his foot in the door, and so he's saying Summer of Gaming. So this is his initial way of trying to take over for E3, and next year you might see something a little bit different where he is pulling the strings a little bit more than he is right now.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Dom, we were talking about would Geoff Keighley step in and do his own thing, and the resounding kind of argument was like, well, with everything going on with quarantine, how is he going to be able to travel or do what he's doing? So does it surprise you that Geoff Keighley, the way he does, he somehow pulled off his own kind of event surrounding the game industry?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, and I think what it is yeah, like Chris said, getting his foot in the door, and this is going to be a thing, and he's going to seize this opportunity. And I don't think this is the only year we're going to have Summer of Gaming, right? I think this is going to stick around for a long time.
Yeah, and then it's on top of it. The wording gets confusing too because of IGN's thing, which I actually may have written it down wrong. I think maybe no, is it Summer of Gaming? What's IGN's thing?
Similar.
IGN. No,
It's
IGN's
super similar. Like they felt like they could probably maybe get their foot in the door with this after E3 went down, and then he just basically stepped in and was like, I don't know if you know who I am, but I'm Geoff Keighley, so we're gonna just run it off this website from now on. That's pretty much what happened. Yeah.
I did write it wrong. So to correct myself real quick, because it is just confusing. Geoff Keighley's thing is Summer Game Fest. The IGN thing is Summer of Gaming. Yeah, so
that will affect.
yeah, that was my fault. I miscorrectly put it down there, but that's a funny thing. So the name is confusing to me. I don't think the labeling of it was once you kind of figured out what it was. I think everyone was so far into planning, and with quarantine, it's not like Geoff can go out and be like, okay, I'm going to work this with people and we're going to host this thing all in one location. So I think his best bet was, like you guys said, in order for him to plant his flag in the ground for his eventual E3 replacement, is like, I may not be able to host this stuff for you guys, but let me have some involvement. Let me kind of round everybody together and have an easy location, right, where everyone can hear about the news. So it's kind of like taking other people's work and kind of slabbing a title on it, which is pretty interesting. As we'll get into later with the Xbox event, they never mentioned Summer Game Fest, and that wasn't surprising to me because, like we said, it's more of a blanket for all of the events as opposed to it being like the sponsor, right, or highlight of the event. But speaking of more events, we had 2 new events announced this week as well. So we have EA Play Digital. So EA is finally doing their own thing. We were wondering when this announcement was going to come. That's going to be happening on June 11th. And another event that's going to be happening on June 11th is Cyberpunk 2077's Night City Wire, which seems like their own unique digital video. I guess we'll start with you, Dom. What do you think about both of these announcements? And if you had to choose one that you're more interested in, which would it be?
It's tricky. I think CD Projekt, right? I gotten a little bit excited because earlier today or yesterday, it was very recent. EA mentioned that they're doing more Jedi Fallen Order, right? So I'm big into that, but I would be surprised if that made an appearance. If the next game in that series made an appearance at the EA Play. So I think whereas Cyberpunk, I know it's going to be sweet, and CD Projekt, and I trust them fully, and I want to see more of this game. So I think that's where my excitement lies.
Yeah, Chris, do you feel the same or?
Yeah, I mean, CD Projekt is going to be interesting. I feel like it's probably going to be similar to what we saw last year at E3, where they run that demo of maybe 8 to 10 minutes of gameplay, and they run you through with that guy's voiceover and that sort of thing. And EA has just a ton of games. I think on their conference call that they did yesterday, it was like somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, 10 games, one being brand new to the series. That's something they haven't done before. So they've got a lot to show. They always have a lot to show. The problem is some of the games that they do show, nobody cares about. Like, nobody really wants to see Madden regurgitated again. Nobody really wants to see FIFA regurgitated again. So a lot of the stuff that they're going to show on this is going to be kind of boring. And the only thing that I know that we're talking about, like, potentially doing a Mass Effect trilogy. I just don't know who's going to be super hyped for it, aside from people who haven't played the series before. I mean, I love Mass Effect, and it was one of my favorite games of the generation. But the problem is I don't have 200 hours to put back into Mass Effect again with a new console and all of these new games coming out.
Yeah, I mean, so my hope with the Mass Effect remaster, as we'll get into later, is that with the HD, version of it, that maybe they go in there and tweak like loading times and stuff. So maybe it lessens the burden of those games. Also, for me, I'm probably, if it does come out, going to play 1 and 2 and ditch 3 completely. I'm actually one of the people that didn't hate 3, but I just don't. I'm not super into needing to play it again because, like you said, we have less time. So I'd rather prioritize the games in the series that I do love. In terms of both of these events, it's interesting because the Cyberpunk Night City Wire thing, we don't really have an idea of how big or small it's going to be. Like, I don't even know what they're going to talk about. Like you said, it could be a big gameplay demo. It could be updates pertaining to stuff people will get at release for pre-ordering. Obviously, they don't do anything too bad in terms of microtransactions or anything like that. CD Projekt Red has built a reputation for being pro-consumer. It's just interesting what they're going to be showing because both these events are happening on June 11th, which leads me to believe that they're tied to the IGN thing, which then has me thinking like, well, is it a developer interview, right, where they are talking to the developer while they're playing through a chunk of gameplay? With the EA Play Digital thing, Chris, to your point of no one wants to see Madden or FIFA, I would love if they're going to be going digital, they have a separate EA Play where it's just the sports titles, because there are people who want to see that stuff. But if you want to play to both your audiences and cramming those in between the Star Wars title or Anthem Redux or whatever, it doesn't play well. So I would love a separate package where it's like, oh, here's our sports updates for the year, right? That could work.
It would be nice if they did that Cyberpunk. If that Cyberpunk thing was somewhere similar to like how Nintendo does their directs for specific games. I mean, nice and condensed, give enough information that it's meaningful, and then get out. Like, I'm hoping it's that if they drag it out too long on a single game, you're either going to get too much information that you don't want, or it's going to be people complaining that you didn't show exactly what they expected. So if they can just kind of condense it into maybe a 10, 15-minute thing, 20 max, and then be gone, I think that's probably in their best interest.
Yeah. Dom, do you, for that, the CD Projekt Red thing, the City Nightwire, or Night City Wire, are you of the opinion that you want to see more, gameplay mechanics and systems as opposed to narrative? Like, you kind of want to wait for the actual game to come out for you to see that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need anything not spoiled is a strong word, but you know what I mean? I don't need to be sold on the narrative quality of this game. That's what CD Projekt did super, super well with Witcher 3, right? Like, even all the small side quests, like, and the main story, everything was super compelling narratively, so I don't need to be sold on any of that. So I'd rather just go in blind. But as far as, now we're in a first person game and we're in a really packed, tight city, and it's more of a shooter as opposed to Witcher 3. There's more like along the gameplay and systems that I want to see.
Yeah, they had a bunch of news that came out this week too about the all the genital stuff and all that other stuff. So I mean, all jokes aside, they're throwing information out that like people will talk about. Like, that's the kind of thing that people talked about when they talked about The Witcher or not The Witcher, the horses and Red Dead Redemption. So like that kind of stuff. Yeah, like I mean, it sounds silly, but it literally gets yourself in the news and people in a cycle, and it goes through a bunch of podcasts and people talk about it. And so, the fact that they're doing like the gender stuff and it's gender fluid, which I think is really cool. And then they came out and mentioned the fact that all of this had to do with DLC and not actual gameplay for the initial game to start with. I think all of that's really good information, and they're trying to give you as much as they can, but sparse it out a little bit.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest stinger I would want, because I don't want spoilers or anything about the narrative, but it would be cool if maybe there's another celebrity cameo in the game that we don't know about. That would be pretty cool.
That would be rad.
Because that doesn't take away from the actual narrative, right? It doesn't lessen that when you actually play through the game. And knowing there's somebody else outside of Keanu Reeves in the game would be pretty cool, too. So
if there was like a Josh Brolin or something, that would be badass.
Oh, man, yeah. Tom Holland is some weird little sketchy, like, drug dealer. Nice, Tom. Next up, EA confirms multiple titles launching on Switch in 2020. And the second part of this is one HD title will be releasing by March 2021. So, to add to that HD title news, VentureBeat, specifically Jeff Grubb, is saying that buried in the financial reports that recently came out for the end of their fiscal year, it basically alludes to the fact that it's the Mass Effect trilogy, which we already kind of touched on. I guess the only person we didn't hear from is you, Dom. What do you think about a Mass Effect HD trilogy in terms of you wanting to play it?
I'm like I probably wouldn't go back and play those. I never did play one, and they would have to probably revamp that game gameplay wise for me to want to go back. Because I hear a lot that it's like it's a great game, but it's a little old. Some of the systems and some of the stuff like that might not hold up the best.
That's a good question, right? Because HD remakes and remasters run the gamut in terms of what they improve and what they keep the same.
Yeah.
And like knowing there's a Mass Effect HD trilogy, that doesn't tell us like to what level it is. If it's just a pure remaster where they up the graphics resolution, then it's like, well, yeah, a lot of the stuff in Mass Effect 1 doesn't hold up and it'd be tough to go back, right? But if they go over it and they introduce the combat systems from 2 into 1, fix a lot of the loading times, pretty things up, I think it could be way more worthwhile for people than just a straight up, we improve the textures, right?
And then to Chris's point earlier, like, these are kind of longer games. And it's one thing I think back to the Uncharted collection or the Nathan Drake collection, right? Where a similar complaint could be made about the first of those games, right? Like, it's old, the gameplay is not really very good. And they didn't change any of that, right? They just made it look a little prettier. But that game is short. It's like 6 or 7 hours, right? And it's easy enough. So it's like, it's still easy enough to go through. Like, the story's pretty cool. That kind of thing where, like, if it's Mass Effect 1, and I don't know that's got to be like a 30-hour game at least, right?
At least.
Tougher sell.
At least.
Okay.
If you can get past all the wonkiness, yes.
So that's a tougher sell to want to go back and replay if they didn't improve some of those older mechanics. And, like, I like the series, but, like, I'm not, the highest level of fan of them. So 2 was a great game. But, yeah, it's a tougher sell for me to get back into it.
For me to easily explain this to you, Dom, it's like, for the Zelda remakes to come to Switch one day, that's what this is to me, if this is actually true and comes out. Because like we've talked about multiple times, Mass Effect 2 is my favorite game of all time. So, like, with this too, the way I'll probably be playing it is in spurts between other games, right? I'm not going to be mainlining this just because I know the story and I've played the game so many times that I just want to be able to, get more achievements in the games I love, because I love achievements, on top of the fact that I just want to be able to experience that game in a prettier fashion. So I think that's maybe why I'm a little bit more positive on it, because I'm not seeing it as I'm going to be playing only this game for X amount of time, which I agree with you guys is a huge investment that we may not all have at this point, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's true.
This would be perfect for Switch, though. You could pick up and play, and then, take it on the train, play whatever, a mission, and then move on.
That would be
my only worry is, like, man, the loading times for Mass Effect 1 already struggled. I don't know how it would hold up on the Switch. You know what I mean?
Hopping in the
but if they
elevator,
improve
waiting
that
20
stuff,
minutes.
Yeah, God. When Mark Cerny had that presentation talking about, like, the tunnels you walk through and stuff, I'm like, yeah, the Mass Effect elevators. That's exactly what they were doing, hiding load times. That's pretty much it for the rundown of the quick news. We're going to get into this Xbox Series X first look event. Before we get into actual announcements and talk about our favorite, least favorite, and I run through all the games, I kind of want to get a top level, just very simple reaction to the event. I'll go first. In a vacuum, separated from everything else that's currently happening, I would probably give this like a C minus. Currently, given the state of being in quarantine and these teams working from home and the way we had to kind of put things together, I would probably give it a B, a flat B. Yeah, my expectations were set. We talked about before recording that Phil Spencer kind of deflated the air out of the balloon the day before, thankfully. And from everything I read, I was wishing for the Elden Rings and the Batman games, but my expectations were perfectly set that I knew that we weren't going to likely get those, considering the information we got, and we'll get into that later. Chris, what did you feel?
My initial reaction was they mismanaged this, and it wasn't presented or given in a manner in which they initially had said it was going to be. My backed off reaction was these games got some shine that are AA games, because if you put a AAA game in like Elden Rings, or like even when they added the end with the Valhalla stuff, people forget what Bright Memory is and what the Ascent is. So it let AA games shine today. I just wish they would have managed that earlier, prior to when they first messaged this out and let everybody know this was it. I just think it was a really bad way to explain this is our first look at Xbox Series X. I wouldn't have done it with AA games.
Yeah, I feel you. Dom?
I'm really into horror and spooky games, you know? Like I dug Control for that reason. I loved Alan Wake. Yeah, a lot of horror games I could go on about. Dead Space, yada yada.
Resident Evil 3 most recently you played?
Yeah, of course. Not that any of these games were exactly those, but a lot of them had similar vibes and tones and that same weirdness that a lot of those games I like. So I was into a lot of these games. I guess there was a weird thing about how much gameplay there was, but
we'll get into that later. I have some notes about that stuff. Yeah.
Mostly around Assassin's Creed, but in general, I guess we'll talk about it. But like, I thought a lot of these games looked really cool. I don't know, especially I think knowing that it was only going to be third-party stuff. I wasn't like, I thought maybe that is weird for a first Series X showcase, but they're going to do more, so it's like we're going to see more Series X stuff. That's we're going to see Halo Infinite and whatever else, and Elden Ring eventually. So I don't know. This was cool. It was more than we saw yesterday. So,
and that's the problem too with the label of third party is people automatically jump to third party, meaning the other AAA publishers that create games, right? Whereas third party means the AA's, right, and the other AAA. So that's tough because from Xbox's perspective, they can't be like, we're going to show our third party partners who you may not have heard of or make games that you probably don't see from time to time. They couldn't have worded in a way that would have made it clear for the consumer, but it would have pissed off their partners or not put them in the right light. You know what I mean? So that was an awkward thing too. But let's get into
the other thing is it's May. Like, I mean, we're getting people were angry on Twitter today, and it's May, man, and we're getting games. Like, we're getting new games. Like, and the fact that like people bitch and moan all the time about, hey, there's no new IP. All of these were new IP. Like all of them. So like people are showing brand new things, and you should be excited about them. AA developers become Project Red became CJ Project Red based upon being a AA and turning into a AAA. So like the next person could be the next game that you see. So I just it's unfortunate that like and I'm part of it. Like I was frustrated, but like when you think about it, I mean a lot of that's how this would have been an E3 reel where you would have guessed about what these games were versus them getting individual shine today.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing too with PlayStation being so quiet, I think it negatively affected it too because gamers are so hungry for stuff. The moment that PlayStation gamers or people who favor at least a PlayStation, the moment they heard this was third party, they're like, oh, this is our opportunity to get announcements too, but for Xbox. That's why they wanted the Batmans, right? Because they were like, well, PlayStation's taking so long to show us stuff. At least we'll get to see stuff that we'll be able to play on our PS5. So when they got these AA games, they're like, oh man, I still had to wait for PlayStation, and therefore there was more vitriol there. And like you said, it's May. Like, I would never expect to get announcements in May period from 10 years ago, right? Because it's just not the way it works. To me, I saw this was like icing on a cupcake as opposed to the actual cupcake. But you know how the internet is. Let's get through these announcements, though, because I think there's a lot of negativity online, and I feel bad for all the developers who got their moment to shine in this, and I kind of want to focus on their games because there was a lot of really cool stuff. I think you guys feel the same way. So The May 7th Inside Xbox unveiled the following games, with all of them being optimized for Series X. They showed off that badge that kind of got revealed the day before, which we'll talk about later in terms of box art and stuff. But the first game, Chris has touched on it a couple of times, Bright Memory Infinite. So this is a first-person action shooter by FYQD Studio, which is one person, which is crazy because when you see this presentation of the high-quality visual fidelity, the tight gameplay, I thought it looked cool. One thing I want to note before I get your impressions on the game, guys, is that Bright Memory came out and was a demo on Steam, and people could pick it up and play it, and it got so much traction that the developer, the single person, decided to make a full-fledged game on it, which is pretty nifty. So what did you guys think? I thought it was a really nice opener for the show, and it was visually very impressive. Chris, what did you think?
I thought it was the most impressive game that they had visually. When I first saw it, it totally just kind of took me back. I'm like, wow, so this is what next gen looks like. It was pretty rad. I hadn't realized, because obviously when I first saw it, I didn't realize even who the developer was, or it was a one-man team. I learned about the Steam thing afterwards. You could still pick it up on Steam right now if you wanted to.
Yep.
And I think it's just really, really cool. It kind of had vibes of Destiny a little bit, with like that first-person action, and then being able to like throw out that rope that had that chain that had like a blade on it, and then bring people back in. I thought it was just pretty awesome, and the fact that this is going to be a sequential series, I guess, from what I'm reading, that it's going to be not just like a full game, like they're going to break this up into parts, and the fact that Xbox has it, I think, is really cool.
Then breaking it into parts, Dom, do you think there could be a future Game Pass partnership there, of like these smaller pieces of this game get put onto Game Pass, and maybe they can strike a deal there for this single developer?
Yeah, that makes sense, especially when you look at, it's a single person, if it was a small team or whatever. It seems like that could be a way to help get this, make sure you got consistent funding kind of a thing, and it's going to get eyes on it better this way, right, when it's just available on Game Pass for everybody. So I could see that. But yeah, I thought this looked pretty sweet too. I was thinking more like first person Sekiro with guns.
Yeah, that's a very good way to describe it as well.
Very cool.
I initially thought it was, are you guys familiar with the Shadow Warrior titles? Shadow Warrior?
Not really.
So they're like AA games. They're pretty beloved from what I've seen on the internet from people, and they're just like hack and slash games. I thought this was maybe like part of that universe, or some people were even guessing the Crisis. Some people thought it was going to be a new entry in the Crisis series. Just the way it looked, right? It looked very high fidelity. Also, one last thing that is available through Smart Delivery as well. I've highlighted throughout the show, they made a good point to show the games that were, which most of them were, available through Smart Delivery and Xbox Game Pass. Next up, this one I personally don't have too much to say because I'm not a huge racing guy, but we saw Dirt 5 by Codemasters. To me, it looked like it was heavily inspired by Forza Horizons. Or Horizon, I don't know, I added an S
That's what
there.
I thought it was at first.
Yeah.
So did I.
Yeah, because it has a very festival-y feel. There was a focus on multiple seasons and environments, right? It's cool. It showed how most racing games show, where it's not direct you sitting there playing the game. It was gameplay, but it was like sitting on the side of a road as cars pass by and take turns and stuff like that. So, it was funny. People thought it was Forza Horizon, but the moment you think that, you're like, oh wait, the first party stuff is in July, right? So there's no way it could be that. Dirt, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, as an interesting racing series, because it's not one I often hear about as being the most popular, but I mean, they've made it to 5 titles, right? So they're doing
People
something
like
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dirt
I'm not
5.
one of them, but a lot of people like that stuff, I guess.
Yeah, also available through Smart Delivery as well. Anything about Dirt 5 you liked, Chris? Or are you not really a racing guy?
Not really into racing. Like, I'm not even into Forza and stuff like that. It's just not my cup of tea. I mean, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the graphics, because, like, basically that's what their system sellers on graphics usually, when an initial console comes out, like, that's what they show. Like, Xbox is going to hype up Forza. Like, that's, you need to own this. But it's just not my cup.
Yeah, I mean, the most beautiful games will likely be Forza Motorsport 8 on Xbox Series X and Gran Turismo, whatever that is, right, for PS5. The racing games are always like the showpieces for the consoles. It's usually just how it is. Next up, this is the first game we saw that didn't really have any gameplay at all. It was kind of just environmental shots. This is Scorn. This is from Ebb Software, first-person psychological horror game. Huge Prometheus/Alien vibes in this game. Very gothic horror. This will be coming out on Xbox Game Pass, and there's further details we'll get into later about this game. As someone who loves horror, Dom, did Scorn move the needle for you in any way?
Yeah, so, yeah, no gameplay, not much of anything really going on, but it looks sweet. And that was one where it made me want to see the gameplay and what this game is. You know what I mean? It showed me a little bit, and it left me wanting more, though, because, yeah, that whole vibe was, like, really gothic horror, Gears of War, bug crawling in things type of shit. I don't even know. Like, this was cool.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? Was there a specific part of this, thematic highlight you liked, or are horror games not your thing?
No, actually, when I was thinking of like two highlights in my head from watching it, one was like the red belly on that guy, like totally made me think of Death Stranding, and like immediately I'm like, oh, it's a Death Stranding baby. Is it in there? Like that'd be cool if it popped out. And like the other thing was the thing that stuck out and then like dripped, like it was like peeing and then like came back, and I was like,
the very
that's kind of cool.
like faucet
yeah, it was
thing.
very phallic, and I was like, wow. But hey, listen, if those are the two things that and that's the reason why I remember the game, you know what I mean? Like that's the draw. Like now I remember, and like if I see it again, I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that game. I remember seeing it on the Xbox thing. So. Not my cup of tea. I'm not really that type of horror. Like I like horror games, but not that specific. Like the vibe doesn't feel like it's something that I'd be into. But I really think it was a great demo.
So this game also has a demo on PC, like Bright Memory does. It's been in development for a while. It was actually a sponsor of the Easy Allies podcast, which is pretty interesting because it's been in development for so long.
Scorn! Yeah.
Somber Tapestries. Yeah. This is definitely gives me a lot of, if you guys are familiar with the Amnesia series of horror games, it gives me those vibes, where it's less jump scary and more like psychological horror, obviously. So we'll see what happens. Anything that's, inspired by H.R. Giger or like Alien in general is really cool. I just love that art style, and they kind of turned the dial to 11 on that one. Next up, a game that I thought originally was called Corvs because they did the stylized thing where they make the U of the name a V. Chorus is a sci-fi flight combat game who features a female protagonist. This also has psychological horror vibes. It's developed by Fish Labs and published by Deep Silver, and is also available through Smart Delivery. I'm not a flight sim guy or flight combat guy either, but what I will say is it did hook me a little bit on the narrative, where it was this girl kind of losing her mind, and there's a lot of like weird, like space alien stuff going on. But for me, the moment I saw the gameplay, I was like, yeah, not for me. I've just never liked flight games at all. They're just not my thing. So I don't know. Did Chorus hook you?
I had the same kind of like thought process of like, is this Control? Like, what's going on here? This looks sweet.
Oh yeah.
and then they show the gameplay, and I was like, oh, well, okay,
yeah,
not my thing.
Yeah,
I did think it was cool that Deep Silver was helping with it, because like they got their hands in a few things, and so I thought that part was pretty rad. But flight simulators are just not my thing. Like unless I'm in Star Wars and I'm doing like a Battlefront flight sim, like that's about all I can do.
Yeah. So recently, Chris, a friend and I had gone back and replayed through Halo Reach, and my least favorite mission in that game is there's a flight mission where you're like in space flying, and I just lose myself in that gameplay because there's no directions. You can find yourself upside down, and I don't get disoriented or nauseated. It just is not fun to me. I'm just like, bleh. I'd rather be doing literally anything else. But don't want to talk down about the game. Looked cool for people who are into flight games. I think it has a lot of really good potential. Next up, this is where a little bit of controversy, and I know it's a little bit hyperbolic me using that word, but we'll get into it. So next up, they showed Madden 21. Patrick Mahomes out there talking like he's Kermit the Frog. I love Patrick Mahomes, but he has like one of the funniest voices in the NFL. So they showed a brief glimpse. They did this like a retrospective where they started with OG Madden and went through the years leading up to this year. It was like a 8-second at most clip. And here's the thing. It was awful for them to show that little gameplay. As somebody who plays Madden every year, there was one really cool thing about that people who don't play Madden or don't give two dams about it would not notice. That is really huge for Madden players. Can either of you guess what that is? I don't even remember the footage because it was so short.
Was it the footage where he was diving into the end zone and trying to lean over with the ball? Like where he was flipping his wrist?
Yeah, reach for the pylon.
Yeah,
you've never been able to do that in a Madden game. Ever. And strategically, that changes a lot of how you play. I know that might seem dumb for people who don't enjoy football or whatever, but the ability to reach out for the pylon can lead to turnovers. It can lead to you scoring when you're not able to. Like, it does a lot for the gameplay. And if you're able to reach out for the pylon, I'm pretty sure it's a mechanic that you'll be able to use, period. So maybe you'll be able to reach out for first downs, right? So that was interesting. Cool. It was little gameplay, sucks. They said you'll see more later. Earlier we talked about EA Play Digital. It'll probably be there. But I thought that was a really cool little glimpse of something new coming to the franchise. That being said, it has fake smart delivery. And you're asking yourself, Jared, what's fake smart delivery? I barely have a concept for what smart delivery is. Well, folks... It isn't that you get this game and then you can play it on either Xbox system or whatever. What happens with this game is that if you buy it by December 31st of 2020, you can upgrade to the next gen version by March of 2021. So you're upgrading, meaning that you have the old gen version, upgrade to the new gen version, and you lose access to the old gen version. On top of the fact that you can't do this at any point, you have to do it by a deadline. Obviously,
I feel like they should have had something on the trailer that said "Smart Delivery Timed Exclusive," because that's what it is. It's like a timed exclusive for Smart Delivery. It's crazy.
And I guarantee you, this is. I know people are batting down the hatches on EA because that's a thing. This is totally an NFL licensing thing, in my opinion.
I'm sure it is.
I guarantee you that's what it is. It has less to do with EA and more to do with the NFL. Yeah, I don't think this is terrible, like in a vacuum on its own. But it being side by side with games that are smart delivery looks terrible, right? Because this is kind of like the way old gen treated it, where I guess for Madden last gen, you actually had to pay $10, I believe, to upgrade. This is still free. It's just a specific date range you have to, do it by. So
the funny thing, like, it's free, yeah, but if you're outside of that time period, then what? It's $60?
Yeah, you just have to buy the next gen version, yeah.
But it's like, but it's also backwards compatible. So you're paying $60 for a texture pack, or you know what I mean? Like,
pretty much.
That's wild, right?
It's forcing people, or it's pushing you to buy it before Christmas. I mean, because most of their sales are in the early part of the NFL season when they sell these games. So it's pushing you to buy it before that deadline.
Yeah.
And they let the 31st be out there because, of course, you want people to buy it for Christmas. You know what I mean?
The thing I will say real quick, Madden on Xbox One had features that Madden on Xbox 360 didn't have. Just throwing that out there.
I just think this is... Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So should be more than just higher resolution textures.
Should probably. We don't know.
we don't know. We would hope that there's some extra features, maybe a game mode or something like that. We'll see. But I think this doesn't matter that much. Like, people are gonna go buy the other football game that's out right now. Yeah.
The people who care about upgrading to a next gen version of Madden will buy it before December 31st. Period.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think
it still sucks, but yeah, I don't think it'll be super effective.
I think the only people that it really hurts is Xbox and their messaging of what smart delivery is, because if you have things that are happening like this where it's timed or where it doesn't work with every game, or there are developers that aren't on board with this, it either makes Xbox look bad or it makes the developer look bad, or they can't explain it with every single. So then you have to put that sticker on every single one that says smart delivery for specific games and not all games. And it's just a big to do, especially when you have a parent who's purchasing, let's say for Christmas, this for a kid that they've already bought some games for, and some of those games don't transfer, and it just becomes a really big mess.
Yeah, I remember, like when they first talked about smart delivery, there was that sentence in there like, we're going to do it with all our first party games, and the technology is there for third parties to do it too. And you just knew from that, like, yep, so CD Projekt is going to do it. EA, we'll see. And then you kind of go down the list of like, probably a lot will, but we'll see how each publisher, does their individual thing.
And the worst thing about this is the Xbox is the partner of the NFL. Like, they're partners with each other. So it's even, it just doesn't even make more sense. Yada, yada, yada.
The Mahomes stuff was sweet, though. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I like him. He has a really funny voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he does.
One of the funniest voices in sports.
He did a good job because he wasn't like looking away from the camera.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You knew that he like really, really like knew the lines and was like just giving it straight, or at least it appeared to be that way. So I appreciated that. The fact that he like threw it right out there and was like, "Yep, Super Bowl champion."
Yeah, Super Bowl champion.
I'm like,
yeah.
Yep.
They also showed like his most awkward highlight from the Super Bowl of like the awkward like rushing touchdown he had.
Yeah.
Like, man, you could have did my boy a little bit better than that. Anyways, next up, I was going to say this is one of the creepiest trailers in the show, but like Dom alluded to, there's plenty of horror games in this event, so I don't know if it was the creepiest. It was maybe the most off-putting. We got Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. My only note on it is it looked rough.
The
And
graphics were bad.
this game has looked rough ever since I saw it, and this is one of those games that it's a sequel to a cult classic, right? You hear people talk about the original title of how great it was and what it did for the genre and yada yada yada. And this is just an example of like an indie-ish dev trying to ignite that nostalgia. And I think the environments looked incredible. I think all of the player model stuff was like, yikes, looked very off.
The hair looked terrible. Like it was like really bad. Like that's what I kind of zoned in on when that guy was like weirdly dancing around people. I'm like,
Yeah.
that hair and his face look awful. Like what are they doing? And I thought it was a sequel. It is, right? It's a sequel?
It's a sequel, yeah.
Yeah, you would think that they would have been able to upgrade that or figured something out. I mean, this is next gen. I don't understand. It doesn't look next gen at all.
Smart delivery though. This is a cross-gen title, so yeah, it wasn't a great showing for the game, but it's funny because they showed gameplay and you saw the player model, so it looked rough. But if they would have done a scorn thing or it was just environments, people would be like, "Oh, this game's beautiful," because the disparity between the two is night and day, completely night and day. Before we move on, anything you wanted to say about it, Dom? Or you agree? Just like, yeah, it did not look good.
Yeah, that was just a bit of a miss for me. And then when the title showed, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've heard of that game, and that's, it's a double A type game, right? So it's like, okay, that's what it is, and then, sure. For a second, when they were like dancing or whatever, they were doing the weird dances. I was like, is this like, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, like the game or something?
Oh
I
god,
think about that, but that is similar to that. Oh yeah.
if it wasn't listed as a third party thing, I could have seen it being as like some weird like We Happy Few offshoot because it definitely gave me those vibes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Call of the Sea. So Call of the Sea, I would describe it as Shape of Water meets What Remains of Edith Finch. From what I got from the gameplay trailer, the art aesthetic to me reminds me a lot of Firewatch, which is interesting because the voice you hear, the narrator, I was immediately caught off guard of like, I've heard that voice before. Who is that? And I'm pretty sure both of you have heard her voice as well. So the lead character in this game is voiced by Cissy Jones. Now immediately you might be like, oh, I don't know that name, Jared. Who is that? So Cissy Jones voiced Delilah in Firewatch, the main female character in that game. She also voiced Katja in The Walking Dead, who was the mom, the old lady mom in the first season, Dom. And she also voiced Joyce in Life is Strange, the mother of the lead character in that as well. So for me, it's a character actor that I really like, and I love the vibe of the game. Like I said, for me, it's Shape of Water meets What Remains of Edith Finch. Both of those things very weird, but the storytelling in both of those to me is like top notch. So I'm excited to see what this game showcases. Did either of you get those What Remains of Edith Finch vibes at all?
Not so much. It looked cool. The environments look cool and the colors and everything. Like the art, I guess, the art style is really cool. But yeah, we'll see.
When I heard Sissy's voice, I knew it immediately. So I knew who it was right away. And I actually, like when I first saw it, I thought it was Campo Santo's In the Valley of Gods. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, they can't put it on Xbox. So no, it's not that. So then I got more into the trailer to try to figure out what it was. I thought it was interesting. I like walking sims. Edith Finch and those type of games are like right up my alley. So I'm really looking forward to. Actually, this is one of the few games where it kind of hit me where I'm like, yeah, that's a game that I would definitely play or buy.
And it definitely hits the variety of the showcase in general because it looks so different than everything else shown. So I really appreciate that as well. That's going to be Smart Delivery and Xbox Game Pass, which is dope. So I don't even have to pay for that since I have Game Pass Ultimate, which is awesome. Next up, The Ascent. So The Ascent is a twin sticks shooter. Cyberpunk aesthetic, because that's what we're going to be getting now, boys. It's all cyberpunk, Vikings, and samurai. That's our future for the next generation. Smart delivery. So it started with a cinematic type trailer. It was obviously in game because a lot of the character models were rough. And then when it cut to the gameplay, for me it was a little bit more interesting than your general twin stick shooter because it did have some side scrolling parts and it looked like there was shops and stuff you might be able to visit and buy items. Because to me, whenever I think of twin stick shooters, it's like level based, right? Or like arena based, where you go and you do some stuff and then you go on to the next level. This seems like it could be deeper and more detailed environments with a lot more to do. So that intrigued me. I don't know if it did anything for you guys. I loved like the world building though, like the entire aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing?
me too.
Yeah,
It's
completely get it. Full transparency, I don't think I'll play this game unless it comes to Game Pass.
Yeah.
I just thought it looked
Sure.
really cool. Just because twin stick shooters aren't my jam, man. I just not how I play. The intriguing thing is they didn't really show off multiplayer either, so I wonder if this is a single player experience or if maybe they're saving that for a later reveal. Like, yo, it's multiplayer as well. We don't know, so be interesting
Twin
to see
stick
what
shooter
happens there.
games though are like so perfect for Switch. Every time I think of a twin stick shooter, I think of Switch because they're so easy on the go, and I've played a bunch of them on Switch. So like,
Yeah.
if I played a game like this, it wouldn't be sitting at a console. It would be like on the go, someplace. I think I don't know. For me, that's I associate twin sticks with that.
Yeah. Next up, The Medium. So this game, I mean, it showed the briefest of gameplay at the end. I wouldn't even really. It was like super edited gameplay of her like walking the character. But so this was a horror game by Bloober Team. It started with a woman who was pregnant in a hospital. A bunch of demonic stuff starts happening. Then it cuts to her in a church. More demonic stuff happening. Some of the like demonic cutscene stuff, Dom, I don't know if you felt the same way. It gave me like Dark Souls 1 vibes of like with a brown and like black aesthetic of like the decaying city. I was like, this is
Yeah, I
totally
see
like
that.
feels From Software-y. And great music in it. And then it cuts to one of the developers and he announces that Akira Yamaoka is composing the game. And if that name doesn't sound familiar, he's the man who's responsible for the Silent Hill music, which is like lauded by most people, which is great to have for your horror game, right? Have the soundtrack composed by a guy who's composed some of the most notable horror games in video game history. So to me, I think Call of the Sea was my highlight for the show, but this is a strong number 2. Like, I really like The Medium. I don't know, Chris, did you feel the same way?
I was in as soon as I saw the beginning part of the trailer. I thought the scenes on it were really good, and they drew me in because when they showed her and then they showed her without the baby, I'm like, wait, what? Huh? And then all of a sudden the median stuff started, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then you find out that it's on Game Pass, and you're like, oh, this is even better.
So, Dom, best case scenario, this is Alan Wake, but instead of a male protagonist, it's a female protagonist. How does that excite you?
And more blood or something, and a little even creepier. No,
Yeah.
I'm 1,000% in on this. This looked awesome. This was the coolest thing I think I saw throughout the whole presentation.
And this will also be coming to Xbox Game Pass, which I'm like, hell yeah. Next up, for all you weeaboos out there, we had Scarlet Nexus by Bandai Namco. Gave me personally strong Astral Chain vibes. It's totally the third-person action anime game you're thinking of in your head. The main character has psychological manipulative powers, and it seems like he's part of a team that also has those powers. The enemies are weird, like aliens with roses as heads. I don't know if that's the best way to describe them. Like they all had flowery, weird protrusions from the top of their bodies. I'm not really like the audience for this game, so it really did nothing for me. But what I will say is that the fact that this type of game is in an Xbox show shows progress, and I'm happy about that. There's another game we'll get to later that also shows how cool this is, because normally as Xbox fans, they wouldn't get this stuff in an Xbox showcase just because Japanese developers and publishers didn't want to put their stuff on Xbox because it wouldn't sell. So I don't know. Did it do anything for you guys? And do you feel the same, that it's a really cool thing for Xbox to have this type of game, whether or not you're excited about it?
Nothing. I mean, yeah, this wasn't my cup of tea either. But I guess you do bring up a good point. That's the more collaboration Xbox can start doing with Japanese developers, the better. So yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Get something positive out of what otherwise is just not a game we care about, I guess.
Yeah. Chris?
I think that Japanese developers are going to realize that play anywhere means play anywhere, and they can't deny the fact that getting their product on Xbox will allow them to have different avenues in order for people to play their games. So I feel like that's how Xbox is going to get their in.
And this is all a product of Phil Spencer's footwork too, right? We've seen him tweet about going to Japan like numerous times, flying over there to meet with publishers and developers because he understood how bad of a job the previous regime did of building those connections. I mean, the Xbox One didn't even launch initially in the Japanese market because they felt there was no need to. So by the time Phil took over, they're already head and shoulders behind, and there's literally no stamp for Xbox One in that territory. So props to him because it's paying off, and hopefully we see more partnerships like this because it's really cool. Next up, Second Extinction. This is essentially Left 4 Dead with dinosaurs. This, I guarantee you, this was added to the list because people have probably heard about, gamers wanting a new Turok game for ages at this point, and this is, I guess, the best thing we're gonna get for a while. So it's developed by System Reaction, and it's coming to Smart Delivery. I thought it looked cool. Definitely screams AA. But if the systems and stuff work, I think it could be a really cool time with friends, because we don't really have any dinosaur-centric, like, shooters, like first-person shooters, right? That's why people are clamoring for Turok, because we don't really have that anymore. And the idea of being able to kill dinosaurs with guns is awesome in video games, in my opinion. I don't know how you guys feel.
No, I thought this was cool. Like, the gameplay of shooting the dinosaurs, like this, that looks fun. I'm not much for the co-op multiplayer kind of a thing myself.
Yeah.
I think people would have lost their shit had the word Turok come across the screen. Like they literally would have lost it. But the fact that it's in kind of the same vein, and obviously you're not going to get the upper end quality that you might get from a Turok game, but at least you kind of get a taste of what you're looking for in that type of genre, and with the dinosaurs and the first person and all that other stuff. I thought it was really well done. It just didn't spark any interest in me outside of me thinking that it was like a really cool demo, and I was actually kind of hoping for the people that were Turok fans that it actually was that for them.
Yeah. I mean, with World War Z coming out and doing pretty well, and it's in the similar genre, I think there is a space for this to succeed if it comes out and has solid gameplay, right? And no offense to Friday the 13th or Predator Hunting Grounds, but those games don't really have a super high polish quality to them, and they've had audiences be enthralled with those games, right? So there are audiences who latch onto these things. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because people are so thirsty for Turok. God, if a first-person AAA Turok game gets announced this year, I'll be super excited. I just want to shoot a Velociraptor with a shotgun, man. Just let me do it. Next up, Yakuza Like a Dragon. So this one is probably the most surprising out of all of the titles, because Yakuza has been tied to PlayStation for years, right? And we've seen recently that the series has been coming over via Xbox Game Pass, and it's finding an Xbox audience, which is great. This game released in Japan last year, and they're wondering when this game is going to come out this year. We have a 2020 date. Well, with this trailer, we know that it's launching in the West as a launch title on Xbox Series X, and it was revealed after the fact that Xbox has the marketing rights on this game, which is crazy. For Xbox to land the marketing rights for a Yakuza game, I don't know if you guys are as surprised by that. That's kind of crazy.
This feels like the conversation that Phil was talking about, where he went over and was having conversations, like the negotiations. You know what I mean? Like, this is one of those ones where they put that in their back pocket, and then they give their middle finger to PlayStation, and was like, "Yep, we have it now." You know what I mean? So they have to try to garner these big Western titles in order to try to help build the brand over there, and so this was a big deal. This is a big win for them.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the trailer itself didn't really sell the game that well, because it was a cool trailer, don't get me wrong, but it's actually a turn-based JRPG. Would you know that by just watching that trailer, guys? No, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, it's a turn-based JRPG, so quite a surprise.
So this is like in the vein of Persona, like.
I don't know. I'm not gonna pretend to know the specific details. All I know is that there was a big conversation afterwards of like, "Yo, that trailer was awesome, but sell it like you should and let people know it's a turn-based JRPG." My point of view personally is I think this is the best way to ease people in, because, like we've talked about, this type of market isn't something that's been on Xbox for a long time. So I think coming out of the game being like, "This is a hardcore JRPG turn-based game," might be a little off-putting, right? So I think sell the characters, sell the wackiness of it, and then go into the actual gameplay would be the smarter strategy, in my opinion, anyways. I'm assuming Dom, nothing to mention here.
No, I think you're right. I hadn't even heard of this series until, I don't know, probably a year or two ago. But apparently, as I'm finding out in the past like couple of months, it's a big deal. There's a good section of people out there that love this shit, and I don't really have any idea what it is.
That's crazy.
Was this the game where they fired the voice actor, the one that was on drugs?
No, you're thinking of Judge Eyes.
Was it? Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was accused. Okay.
completely understandable. A lot of the protagonists, like, I think they're all developed by the same studio, or at least the same grouping of studios. So they all have the same aesthetic in the way they like their character models and stuff. It gets pretty confusing, man. Especially none of us are into Yakuza, right? So it's like knowing the specific details of that franchise. Yeah, but it's cool. I like that they announced this game. Now, to get to the most disruptive and what I would say the only disappointing thing of this entire event is the Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay teaser. Now, so this is through Smart Delivery as well. First off, I want to get off the ground. We all are disappointed that it didn't show like extended gameplay or real gameplay by any means. I want to do some research real quick to see if our expectations were right. Should we've been in that place? And first off, this is a little side thing. When they revealed Odyssey's gameplay, right, they labeled it as gameplay walkthrough, clearly stating what that was. You guys remember that at E3, right? They showed, I think it was Alexios maybe in the demo, but going through that whole little encampment. For this, it was titled, ever since the beginning, First Look Gameplay Trailer. Now, doesn't necessarily say walkthrough, so it's like, why are you expecting demo? But it does say gameplay trailer, right? So it's like, what exactly does that mean? So the terms there are different. So I get that they made sure not to name it something that we already knew that we should expect, but it's still disappointing either way, right? Like for it to be the crux of this presentation, when people are waiting for this like to be one of the biggest games of the year and for you to have the edited trailer, like I said, if the messaging was right, I think it would have been fine, but people were expecting something and you didn't deliver that, right? So expectations weren't met. So
yeah, and I even like, because I was rewatching earlier the whole thing, and like halfway through the presentation, you know, the little message pops up of like, stay tuned for Valhalla premiere of gameplay or whatever type of thing. And it's like, yeah, it's just weird that that's how they worded it compared to that's what they showed. That being said, there was also a big portion of the internet that was really upset that one of the puddles in Spider-Man PS4 didn't look the same in the trailer as it did in the final game. People were upset about that. So while this was like a whoops, we didn't say this quite right in a moment, I think there's also it'll be okay, everyone. You know, like maybe a bit. It's fine. They're gonna show more games. We're gonna see more Assassin's Creed eventually. Like, it's okay, I guess is my like response. Like, yeah, this was maybe a miss, but like it'll be all right, everyone. You know.
So Chris, with this, we already talked about how Xbox is complicit in this as well, but with this Assassin's Creed Valhalla stuff specifically, Xbox can only show whatever Ubisoft provides them, right? So, sure. In my opinion, I think for the Assassin's Creed Valhalla stuff specifically, I think Ubisoft is more so to blame because they were part of hyping it up as well. And do you think it's a thing of like Dom was alluding to, that maybe they're afraid to show something when it's not finalized and they don't want to get that internet backlash? Or do you think that maybe they just had a different understanding and were confident in this because they thought they messaged it correctly?
I think that Xbox needed a major third-party game to get people to watch this. Because if you would have just thrown out the fact that you had a bunch of AA games, nobody or most people would not have paid as much attention to it. Yeah. So leaving Valhalla to the end, regardless of the mismessaging, which I'm sure Xbox knew in advance this wasn't going to be gameplay, they just let it ride. They let it ride because people are going to continue to watch until this thing plays. This is why they saved it all the way to the end, so that everybody would watch the rest of the games that they planned on showing. So I don't think it was unintentional. I think they intentionally asked for them to give them something. They have a partnership. Ubi was like, this is what we can give you. It's probably part of the trailer that they could have added on to the other trailer. They cut it. They gave them this little bit, and they were like, here, this is what you can have, and the ship thing will be yours. The long-range ship thing will be yours, so that you can see that there's long-range ship play. Okay, great. But they knew exactly what they were getting. This was just a way to reel you in and reel everybody in because they said gameplay next Thursday on Xbox, blah, blah, blah. And that was the messaging.
Yeah. And that's the funny thing is, I think if you remove Assassin's Creed Valhalla from this, though we'll get a lot less viewers, I think people would be more positive on. I don't even know about that with the internet. But I think us three would have been at least more positive on it as a whole, right?
For
or
sure.
if they actually showed what you thought they were going to show at the very least with the Valhalla, we would have been more positive on it. But the inclusion of it and not living up to what they kind of messaged left it in this weird middle like place, right? So the totals for the show that I thought were interesting, and one of these is super subjective, the second one, in my opinion anyways. So they showed 13 games. I wrote down 8 of them had tangible gameplay. And by that, I don't mean not edited gameplay, but where you can clearly point at that and look like, oh, that's somebody playing the game, that's gameplay, right? There's not like this weird mixed stuff. Like even Score I didn't list as one of these because though it was in-engine, you literally didn't see any gameplay, right? So, like I said, super subjective, but I in my eyes, I saw 8 with tangible gameplay. I didn't even mark Yakuza Like a Dragon as gameplay because though that showed in-game stuff, like we talked about, it's a turn-based strategy, and nothing in that trailer showed turn-based, right? So that's where I came down with it. 10 of the 13 games will have smart delivery, which is dope. 2 of them are coming to Xbox Game Pass, which we'll discuss shortly. But I have some additional information I'm going to go through, and if anything jumps out at you guys, just let me know, okay? So first up, was labeled as first look at next-gen gameplay. That's just clarifying what it was labeled as because people were running away with what it exactly meant. That's what it was labeled as. Whether you liked that it was labeled correctly or you felt that it was labeled incorrectly, that's what it was. Next up, they showed during the presentation that we didn't mention earlier a logo wall of hundreds of devs and pubs working on Xbox Series X titles. I thought it was pretty cool. It was like a good grouping of them, and then it like zoomed out and it added a bunch of them around the other logos. As an editor, doing that probably took so much time because you need to find the high quality resolution images. Those companies will complain if theirs is smaller than other people's, so you need to make sure they're all relatively the same size for it to get approved. God, it's a pain. So props to whoever was stuck with that job during quarantine because it sounds awful. Next up, we talked about the reveal of the optimized for Series X box stamp, right? That little like green badge. Well, they actually released there was an image of the first official placeholder box art. I don't know if you guys got to look at this for Yakuza Like a Dragon. So this isn't final box art for Like a Dragon, but it is official, right? So if you look at the box on the top, it has just Xbox with the green, which we kind of assumed. Underneath that, it has a little panel that lists Xbox Series X, Xbox One, and there's a blank space there. Which I guess we can talk about that real quick. Do you guys think that blank space is just because it's not finalized? Or do you think that that's where the Xbox Series S or whatever they call it is going to be placed?
No, that's where Scarlett's going.
Yeah. Somebody actually photoshopped it too and took the same sizing and font of the other Xbox One and Xbox Series X. And Series S fits in there pretty well. So, interesting. On the top right of the box, it says Smart Delivery, which is really cool. And then it has the big badge on it for optimized for Series X. Now, this is a little bit of a point of contention. People were like, ugh, that thing's too big. It's taking away from the box art. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if that was that big. But looking at this placeholder image, I guarantee you when they actually get the art for the game, they'll probably edit the size of that badge, right, to fit the box art. It's so big right now because all it is a logo on the placeholder box art. So, I don't know. Interesting, though. I think it's cool. This is the first box art we got, and it kind of leads towards these ideas of, well, how are they going to message these games? It's going to be confusing. What are the boxes going to look like? Is it just going to say Xbox? We have those answers now. I'm just curious, Chris, is that empty spot going to be filled? It will be filled.
It will be. Lord praise this June thing coming up because that's when I believe it's going to happen. So we'll see.
Something I know you're super excited for, Dom, obviously being sarcastic. Bungie confirmed Destiny 2 is coming to next gen. This happened after the show. Bungie kind of quote tweeted the Xbox thing and said, we're excited to work with them as well. We want to let you guys know Destiny 2 has next gen plans. And though this seems like a duh, of course that was going to happen. First time it's confirmed. So interesting to see where they go now that they're independent and how they decide to move forward with the franchise.
I'm shocked they're not doing Destiny 3 or they're not like even having a conversation about it. It's like you need to talk about something else. Like if all you're doing is porting Destiny 2 now over to like a 5th thing, you know what I mean? Because you guys are running on bare bones staff. Like we got to figure this out.
It's crazy people forget the first Destiny was cross-gen.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I mean this is for this is on all platforms. I mean there isn't a platform that this isn't on right now.
Yeah, even the dying one in Stadia.
Yeah.
Cheap shot, sorry. So now that we're done with this event, the question is with Xbox 2020 initiative, where they're going to be doing a new event every month, where do the other following months lie, right? June and July. So here's some information here with direct quotes from Phil Spencer and head of Xbox marketing, Aaron Greenberg, which, by the way, real quick, we didn't mention this. I know a lot of the jokes are like corny and a little cringy. I did love that his Zoom background had the giant Xbox Series X fridge behind him.
Oh, yeah.
I just love when companies aren't like, they're open enough to have jokes at their own expense. I thought that was cool. Anyways.
And then you can't go anywhere near, you can't go within like 1,000 feet of someone who works for Microsoft without them also selling one of their other Microsoft products. Because they had to point out, oh, let's use one of the backgrounds from Microsoft Teams.
Yeah. I love the joke to its scorn where he's like, this is Phil Spencer's home office. I thought that was pretty funny.
That was good, yeah.
So in terms of the June thing, right, this is the one we have the least amount of clarification on. So according to Phil Spencer in an interview he did, he said it will highlight Xbox platform and services. And to add to this, Aaron Greenberg stated, June news will be done differently than Inside Xbox show. So I wanted to talk about, there was one more thing I want to add. Sorry. There was a Twitter reply exchange that happened after Aaron Greenberg tweeted about today's show. And somebody said, well, July is too long with a sad face. And Aaron Greenberg replied, I know, but we got stuff to show and surprise you with in the meantime. So all of those three quotes to me lead me to believe that in June, we're getting their E3 replacement conference, whatever that is, where it's, the way I put it is it's more professional, higher quality, edited. We're not going to be seeing these Zoom webcam feeds. Like, it's going to be a put together presentation, right? And some people are like, well, Phil Spencer said Xbox platform and services, so they're probably just going to be talking about the price and the release date. And the people that say that, it's like, well, they might, but they're not going to talk about that stuff without showing games. Like, they're not just going to have a presentation where they say the release date and the launch date, the price of the console, right? It will include games in some
Mark
regards.
Cerny deal.
Yeah, exactly.
You won't get another Mark Cerny talk. Like, that's not how Phil rolls.
And people were like, well, how come they didn't list the June event with the other ones? And with Aaron Greenberg's comment, he says June news will be done differently than Inside Xbox. So remember, the Xbox 2020 stuff is talking specifically about the monthly Inside Xbox shows, right? An E3 replacement digital thing won't be like Inside Xbox. These are more personal. These are lower quality, less expectations, at least for people who, aren't fanboys. I guess for you guys, do you think these comments, do they lead you to believe that we will get some kind of digital replacement event? Or do you think it'll be, because I've seen some people worried that it'll, with them mentioning platform and services, that it could be a Wired article or something like that. And to me, I'm like, at this point, I highly doubt that happening after we already got one presentation. Chris, what do you think?
I tweeted out earlier that I think that this is where you're going to have explanation about the rollout for xCloud, like in a more formal sense. I feel like you're going to get a Scarlet drop of whatever they're going to call it, Xbox Series S. And if they do the Xbox Series S, they have to give pricing. Like, they just have to. You can't give a pricing for the S series and not give a pricing for the X series. You have to say what it is. I think that gives them a cushion to then have a conversation in July. And I'm with you. I feel like they're going to show stuff, but the July date gives their home studios a bit more time and polish on whatever it is that they're working on. Because if we remember, most of their home studios are behind. They just garnered these studios, and most of them are like trying to catch up. So if they can buy them another month and then say it's a July, whatever it happens to be, it just gives them another month of time to work on this stuff. They don't desperately have to get this information out. These games aren't even going to be released this year anyway. I mean, Halo's the only thing that they're going to have coming out off of a major first-party release studio. So I just feel like the June thing is going to be more of a nuts and bolts type thing with maybe a little bit of gameplay, whereas the other is going to be more of just straight gameplay.
Interesting. So, Dom, what do you think about this? Are you with Chris, or do you believe that maybe the June showcase will be, because here's the thing, with July being focused on first party, that's where you can get the gameplay deep dives or gameplay reveals, and they could maybe reveal a logo. Like they could reveal that Fable is in development right at the June event, and then say we'll show you actual gameplay next month at our first party thing. That could totally happen. How do you feel the June event shapes out for you personally?
Yeah, I think I'm with Chris. I think this is mostly hardware and services type stuff. Whereas then, yeah, July, well, like we hear and assume that that's going to be the game showcase, right? But yeah, June, I'm expecting, Series S, Scarlet, whatever we're calling the mini boy, mini in comparison to Series X at least, probably still pretty beefy, but and then some more information on xCloud and what that is going to look like, because right now it's just in this beta form, which is great and stuff. Super limited in that sense, and then we know eventually Games Pass is going to be part of xCloud.
Yeah,
but exactly how?
Other way around. xCloud will be a part of Game Pass Ultimate, which includes Xbox Live. So it's like the other way around of xCloud getting added to that stuff. But sorry.
Okay, so that's good. So we know something about it. So if you have Ultimate, then you also have xCloud.
We already know xCloud is going to be free for your home server too, right? We know that if you access it at home, it's going to be free on your Xbox Series X.
Right.
That's already been confirmed. Yeah.
Okay.
Because your Xbox Series X acts as a server itself. So at home, since you have one, it'll be free. If you don't have a Series X, you'll have to pay for it. Or if you want to use your xCloud outside of your own home, you'll have to pay for it.
Right. So so that's so like basically what PlayStation has with Remote Play, right? That's only, you can use that. That's free, but only it's limited to what you have in your house or whatever. But then I'm curious to see are all the Game Pass games also available on xCloud? Like, that would be sweet. That'd be crazy, right? To see how that specifically rolls out and pricing and all that kind of stuff too, and what devices it comes out on. And
we know
I think we'll hear more of that.
We know your library you'll have access to, right? But that's tricky because like Xbox Game Pass, is part of your library when you download it, but only if you subscribe to the service. So how does that authenticate, right? That'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
I think the other thing that they're going to talk about is they're going to combine Xbox Live and Game Pass and just call it one thing. I think they're either going to keep the name just Game Pass and just be like, you know what, Xbox Live doesn't exist anymore. It's part of Game Pass. So if you have Game Pass, you have to have Game Pass from now on in, because Game Pass is their entry to everybody else using their services. So why would you separate Live from Game Pass any longer? You want people to play your games. So it's just, we're sorry, but the service is not going to be, let's just say it's not going to be $15 a month. From now on, it's going to be $13 a month. We're knocking $2 off, and it's a combination of the two, and it's now only going to be called Game Pass.
Yeah, so it's currently called Game Pass Ultimate, right? Which combines the two. But that also, marketing-wise, leads you to believe there's a Game Pass not Ultimate. So would they rebrand that, or do they just say, like, yo, this is the only one? So it's called Ultimate, but it's your only option anyways? That'll be interesting. The only thing I'm contesting you guys on with the June stuff is I fully agree with you guys that it's likely the place where we get the smaller, weaker form factor console. It's where we possibly get the release date and the pricing. The only thing I'm kind of at odds with you guys on is both of you guys speak about it in terms of them showing maybe a couple of games. For me, if you're going out there and you're setting the price and you're asking for pre-orders, I think they got to have more than a couple of games. I think they have to have a showcase to show people like why they need to buy the console, because you can't release the price, ask people to pre-order, and then not show your games until the following month, That could be the place where they show Halo. Yeah, so I'm going to give you guys my pitch for what I specifically think, and then you can tell me how crazy I am, right? So, June happens, we have the event, we see Halo Infinite first gameplay, right? We get like a 10 to 15 minute uncut demo. We get some of the cringy like multiplayer dialogue of, hey Brad, do you see that guy? Yeah, I got him, shoot on 3, whatever, in the multiplayer stuff.
I hate that stuff.
We see a lot of their other major third-party partners that we haven't seen yet. We know Elden Ring, right, is not a first-party title, obviously. We know it's not exclusive to the console, and we know that Xbox has a marketing partnership. Therefore, that game has to show up somewhere, right? The Batmans of the world and all these other big third-party games, they're not going to be showcased in July. Some of those games are going to come out by fall, so there has to be something happening in June for them to show at, right? So they have their individual events as well, but if they're marketing partners, they had to show up with Xbox. So I think the conference in June is going to be a lot of third-party partners. Xbox will showcase Halo Infinite gameplay, and they may reveal some games in development, right? Your Fables, your whatever the hell else is. Save, obviously, some surprises, but then say in a month from now in July, we'll show you gameplay from it. So I do think there will be teases, because the way they talk about the July event of it being focused on first parties, they don't necessarily talk about it in a sense of like, this is the only time you're seeing the first parties. They're pitching it as our focus is first party games and our studios. You know what I mean? So I just think that June, we're going to see an E3 replacement. Maybe not an hour and a half as usual, but pretty substantial, because they can't release the price, ask for pre-orders, and say, yo, wait a month for the games you'll care about. You know? They just
I'm
can't.
surprised they haven't come out with a date yet, though. I mean, if we're already getting drops for like June 11th, I'm shocked that Xbox hasn't just planted a flag and said this is the date that we're planning on doing it, so they don't get jammed up with somebody else.
My conspiracy theory is
this past one's done.
Sorry, go ahead, Dom.
I bet it's soon after this past Inside Xbox is done now, right? So maybe they were just waiting for that to be done.
Yeah, my assumption too is the June 11th thing seems like it's in partnership with IGN, right? And I wonder if Xbox is behind the scenes talking to them and they're just trying to figure out stuff, because IGN already said that they're working with PlayStation, or at least Geoff Keighley's working with PlayStation. It's all confusing. So I wonder if all the big boys are trying to figure out when to go, because there is some logistics stuff too, right, Chris, where Valhalla is partnered with Xbox. Ubisoft has already stated they're doing their own thing. Mm-hmm. So how are they going to work out? What are they showing at Ubisoft's thing? But if Xbox is holding a thing, as partners, they want to be able to show something too. So it's like this weird like dance and song of like trying to figure out
That's
where
where these
goes.
major consoles are going to start to have trouble, because these individual developers are going to want to have their own thing. They want their own time to shine, and they don't want to give up too much stuff to the consoles anymore. They don't have to. E3 no longer is a thing, so we don't have to give you our stuff. We can have our own, and it's really cost effective for us to not give it to you. Like, we can do it on our own channel, and people will have to come to us to watch. So that's why first parties are such a big key for Xbox and for Sony, because that's what they have as their catalog to show on these events.
And I think too that's why this presentation we just got was the double A's, because I guarantee you when Xbox talked to their partners, they're like, hey, we want to try to get something together for this, and these studios who are working from home now are probably like, A, we're going to show some of our own stuff, and B, if we can decide to partner with you, but in a month's time, we'll just take that instead of doing it now,
Sure.
right? And I do think
sense.
that maybe Xbox was stuck. I hate to say stuck, because I am excited for some of these games, and I don't want to downplay the developer efforts of these games, but they were left with these AA titles and didn't have any splash outside of Valhalla, which fell flat, right? So
yeah, and to your point, 3 of these games are already games that are on Steam or our previous games. So like they didn't have to do a whole lot of work. Like, we could show gameplay, and it doesn't take much to do a vertical slice of a game that we already have.
Yeah. Before we cut to what we've been playing real quick, I want a prediction from each of you guys. Very simple prediction. In June, what do you think is the most likely first party and third party game we see? For me, Halo Infinite, Elden Ring. Those are my predictions.
In June, Horizon Zero Dawn 2.
For Xbox, obviously. I'm talking about for Xbox.
Yeah, I'll say Halo Infinite. We haven't seen really anything for that, so I think, they need to get on it. So I think that does hit the June spot. I think that's good. Elden Ring. I don't know about Elden Ring. I'm thinking more Call of Duty, but that's probably not an Xbox.
Valhalla is also a safe bet.
Battlefield? Is there a Battlefield coming out this year?
Battlefield is releasing next year. Could be shown this year, though, but it's not releasing until next year.
Madden? No, that'll be at EA.
Yeah, and they never
Elden
really
Ring?
show Madden stuff at Xbox, even though they're partnered.
What if they showed early play of Watch Dogs Legion?
Man, and remember when that game existed?
Yeah, I mean, that's a next year game anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Ubisoft isn't going to lose anything by showing people what's going to happen next year anyway.
Yeah, true. Also, we have to remember that Bethesda stated they're not doing anything, so where do they show up? They have a partnership with Xbox, right? So it's either they don't show anything, or they show something at Xbox's stage, because they've always showed their new games with Xbox, right?
That's a good point. I'm going to give it to
Starfield?
you.
Another gameplay of Starfield?
or something. A Starfield. They could even
Yeah.
just do a
Ghostwire.
cinematic trailer because we just got a logo, right?
Yeah. No. As far as Halo's concerned, I completely agree with you. Like, if they're gonna show a price, they need to soften that blow with Halo. Like, cause that's the only way you soften that blow. When you throw out the word $5.99 or whatever it's gonna be, like, you need to have an extremely great gameplay and your first party beast, like how you're hanging your hat. Because like if it, as Halo goes, is how this Xbox Series X is gonna go, at least for the initial sales. So they really need to hammer home how much they're putting into this game, show the team, show the backstory, show the gameplay. They need to go out all full tilt boogie on this.
Are either of you of the opinion that Batman game comes out this year?
No.
No, not at all. Nope.
Yeah, at this point, the way they've handled the marketing too, Jesus Christ. Anyways, that's been it for the show. Let's talk about what we've been playing. For me, I have quite a bit to talk about. Animal Crossing, as always, just the perpetual... I wanted to say chore, but, I actually enjoy playing it nonstop, so chore is a little bit negative. But the thing I really want to talk about is I completed Final Fantasy VII Remake. I did it, boys. I beat it.
That's cool.
So, here's the thing. As somebody who never played the original, I've been watching a lot of spoiler casts and people talk about it, and as it is with the gaming industry, a lot of people are talking about it from the perspective of playing the original, and I think there's a lot more like nostalgic happiness there. I really enjoyed the game. Has some of my favorite combat in a game in a while. Absolutely love it. The narrative is a little wacky, but the characters are fantastic. I really enjoy the characters. Outside of like Barrett's still a little bit of a caricature for me even by the end of the game. The last 2.5 hours of this game are complete anime JRPG nonsense, and people are kind of forgiving it because, oh, it's Final Fantasy, oh, this or oh, that. Like, the game feels like it wants to end 3 or 4 times, and it just keeps going because video games. Like,
Sure.
There's... How you expect the game to end in terms of you playing video games and knowing how video games typically end. I'm doing this as spoiler-free as I can. That thing happens about 2 hours before the game actually ends. Once that happens, stuff gets loopy and crazy, and it just keeps going and going as an explanation to justify why this remake exists and why maybe the parts afterwards will be different than the original game. You understand what I'm saying there? So, it gets a little crazy. I'm interested in the sequel. I will play this game again when it comes out on Xbox next year after the exclusivity ends. But I would say it was a good game, not a great game. You know what I mean?
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. But the thing is like, it's because I'm somebody who didn't play the original. And I do think that this game, for better or worse, was made for the people who play the original. And that's a tough conversation too, because like they labeled this as Final Fantasy VII Remake. They didn't put part 1, even though it is a part of the original story. But then if they're going to be changing stuff, then it technically isn't a remake because it's different than the original. It's this whole thing, man. It's so convoluted. But yeah, I enjoyed my time with the game. I don't regret playing it and beating it, so that's good. I'm just more confused and down by the ending than a lot of other people are. Seems like a lot of people are making excuses for it and justifying it, like I said, because, oh, this is just JRPGs. Oh, this is just Final Fantasy. And to me, I'm like, no. Like, no. Is there anything else I played that I could talk about? Oh, I have a new addiction. Have either of you heard of Slay the Spire?
Heard of, yes.
I've heard of, yeah.
It.
So, Slay the Spire is a roguelike where you use cards to power up your character and attack. Are either of you familiar with Darkest Dungeon?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, this is like Darkest Dungeon meets either Rogue Legacy or Spelunky, whatever one you're more familiar with, right? So, you have these runs you're going through, and you have these deck of cards, and you acquire new cards and potions and spells you can use and yada yada. And you go down this path. It's like a choose your own adventure where there's top down, you're looking at 4 different paths, and they intercross and interweave, and each one has different icons of this is a battle with a minion, this is a battle with a boss, this is a shop, this is a resting area, right? So going along, part of the strategy is figuring out, do I have enough items and health and stuff to fight a guy here? Or should I go an alternate path where I can get to a heal spot quicker, right? Or get to an item shop and use the gold I have. And it's all about just replayability. There's different characters you can choose at the beginning that have different decks. And I have not beaten this game yet. A normal run through of that campaign is 3 different chapters, and in total it should take you about a half an hour. And I die in the 3rd chapter over and over again. But I'm using different characters. I'm trying different deck builds. I'm figuring out like what different potions work with certain deck builds. There's relics you can obtain that give you bonuses throughout your adventure, right? So you can get a relic that's like every time you start a battle, you draw an extra card, or every time you start a battle, you gain 5 health, right? Stuff like that. So messing around with it. I don't know if it's a game that I'm hooked to for a very short period of time that I'll forget and never play again, or if it's going to enter the stratosphere of games like Spelunky for me, where sometimes I'm just in a Spelunky mood and I go and do a run, right? Low stakes.
Spelunky mood.
Yeah. It's really cool. If you like roguelikes, if you like deck building games, I would highly suggest checking it out. I've been recommended this game for a long time, and I finally got around to it. And yeah, I'm kind of mad at myself that I hadn't played it sooner. So really enjoying that. Pretty much it for me. Just sticking with Animal Crossing, and I'm in this weird space now that I don't know if I should play something major before Last of Us Part 2 comes out, but I'll figure something out. Who knows? Dom, what have you been doing?
I mean, I had been playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm like, I guess I could play more of that, but I just don't care, so I didn't play that game. I don't know. I'm not into it. It's not pulling me, you know?
Yeah.
I can't even give you too much that's like I don't like or that's bad about it. It's just not pulling me at all. So I played a lot of Battlefront 2 instead because that's a great game, and it is pulling me. And I'm having so much fun getting trophies and shooting droids and having a great time being Rey Skywalker with a yellow lightsaber fighting Count Dooku in pajamas. It's just awesome. I just love it. So
if you would have told somebody from 2 years ago, mind you, before all of the improvements of Battlefront 2, yeah, I'm playing Battlefront 2 instead of playing Final Fantasy Remake, which came out, people would be like, are you crazy? Are you insane? Because of the place Battlefront 2 is in at that point and the hyperbole behind like the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? It's just so funny if you were to go back in time and hear yourself of like, what the hell? But
I mean, for me personally, that wouldn't shock me because I love Star Wars and
I'm talking about like public perception. Like if they heard
Yeah.
that comment, like devoid of context,
Like,
it'd
who's
be really
this
funny.
guy? Yeah.
Yeah, like what the hell? But that game's
yeah.
improved a lot, and I'll tell you, Dom, that game's been on sale quite a bit, and I've hovered over the buy button, and I haven't bought it. I bought Final Fantasy IX and Final Fantasy VII Original because they were on sale for like $8 a piece, but I didn't buy Battlefront 2. I'm in that place, Dom, where like I don't want to spend money on a game
for $20. It's awesome.
I don't want to spend money on that game when the next one is probably right around the corner. And my mind's telling me it's right around the corner, but it's probably 2 years away at best. But it's just that weird thing of like, I don't know if I want to spend $20 now. But I'm glad you're enjoying it.
It's an EA game, so even if at best the sequel comes out in 2 years, that sequel is going to be 1/4 of what this game currently is, and then they're going to sell you more DLC to get it back up to, you know what I mean? So
right and also, now, like even Battlefront 1, like my son's still playing on those servers, and it's still full servers. Like you can get in and get into pretty much whatever match you want.
Yeah, but do I want? Yeah, I don't know. I'm in a weird place with Star Wars in general. Of like, I'm not with the franchise, but with the fandom. And it's like,
that's the other thing is I finished watching Clone Wars, the newest season, and it's fantastic. It's awesome. Really good.
Yeah.
On my watch list, I have like the arcs you should watch and the episodes you can skip. I have all that ready to go. I just haven't dove in yet. I'm excited.
Skip all of the last season except for the last 4 episodes.
I like
Ahsoka stuff. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Chris, what have you been playing?
The Bad Batch stuff is good. I've been still playing Days Gone. Like that game is pretty addictive at this point. It's so rad, dude. Like just when I think that I'm good enough and I can go in, all of a sudden a horde will just like completely annihilate me, and I'm like, well, that was the wrong move. And like you have to be so careful. Like I was going into a bandit camp today, like super cocky. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take these guys out, and I was like, kind of cautious, but then eventually I got like really tough guy. I'm like, oh, I could just take these guys out whenever I want to with this gun. And then all of a sudden I ran out of bullets, and I'm like, oh crap. And then like got sniped, like five guys like just sniped me. So the game is a lot of fun. It's really slow pacing. That part is starting to like wear a little bit on me. But I am enjoying the aspect that I have to like plan my maneuvering. Like I have to like literally, like I went into a neuro with my bike too close, and so then all these zombies are like just sitting on my bike. Like they're just like, "Yep, go ahead, try to leave now." And I'm like, "Crap! Now I've got to figure out a way." I should have left my bike like a mile back and ran to it instead. So it's just plotting and planning. So that part's really fun. It was really cool. I was talking to I made a comment about it, the wheel that we were talking about last week, and Steve Bastick from Plus One Player was like, "Yep, same issue. Like totally terrible. That was like the worst part of the game." So I'm like, oh, I'm not alone, which is really awesome. And the other thing has been watching my son play Battlefront 1, man. Like he's like at this point now he's like Xbox record that. So like he had like a midair snipe kill, and I'm like, you gotta shout Xbox record that. So he like shouted it and then got it to replay, and he had no idea that he could do that because he'll just run and tell me what he does. So now I've got like all these recordings on my terabyte thing like of him like doing stuff. So that part's cool too. So those two things have been fun. But yeah, I'm basically just playing Days Gone just because it's so encompassing. And to your point, I don't know. Like I'm getting close to like, should I continue to play Days Gone because The Last of Us is coming up and it's literally going to be the same thing, and I don't want to burn myself out on The Last of Us because of playing Days Gone. So I'm kind of in that place where I'm thinking maybe I'll hop into like a Nintendo game for just a bit to kind of cleanse myself before I go into The Last of Us 2.
I will say, probably the thing I liked most about Days Gone was that feeling that you just described of like you got to plan ahead and like it's tough, and especially the hordes, right? The hordes are like, there's no way I can ever do anything with those things. Like I just can't. Like it's impossible, right? And then maybe midway through the game you'll try it once again, and then you're like, oh, I can kind of see maybe how it would be possible, but I'm just still not there yet. And then maybe like 3/4, you get to a point where you have to beat one for a main story mission.
Sure.
And you're probably going to either die once or twice, but then eventually barely be able to do it. And then eventually you have to do a few more. And by the end of the game, like you're really good at it and you run those fuckers. And like, but you still got to plan and you still got to be strategic, but it's so much fun. Like the way your skills progress with that game is probably one of my favorite parts about it. Because then by the end, and once you've beaten the game and you want to go back and clear out the hordes, it's like, it's fun to do it. It's really cool.
Right now, it's just weapons are so scarce. Like I can't come up with enough arrows to do like the silent shots to like take out like the blaring like speakers at the like I run out, so then I have to like actually shoot, and then they hear me, and then I've got to run away, and then I got to come back, and then I got to run away, and then I got to come back. So like that's part of the gameplay loop. That's the loop on it. But to be honest, the story is actually pretty good. Like I'm enjoying the storyline so far. Right now I have to go to I have a story mission where I have to go to a grave site. So that's super interesting to me, and like why I have to do that in the whole 9 yards. So in any case, I'm happy that I've gone back to it.
Also, Sam Witwer.
Yeah.
Really good.
It's funny when you were talking about the record that stuff. I just imagine, because you talk about your kids playing obviously a lot of sports, of like your kid doing something really cool like at a baseball game or like a soccer game, and then he just turns to the sideline and yells, "Dad, record that."
Record that. He's like, I shot him with one shot. Like he was like it was funny because, and I'm sorry, I'm taking up some time, but his buddy got shot, and like this dude was like doing a dance over top of him, and he has this gun that's like a one-shot kill on a sniper, and so the kid's in the middle doing the dance, and he takes the shot, takes him right in the head, knocks him down, and his buddy's like, "You just been sniped, boy." And like, so then he got like actually somebody tried to like send him a message because he plays under my name just so I can verify like who's like if somebody were to play with him, it would be a friend of mine. And somebody sent a message because my messages are open. And he's like, "You shoot like," and then he put the poop emoji like down. I'm like, oh, it could have been much worse. Geez. The language could have been much worse.
Oh God, yeah. 2006 playing COD Modern Warfare.
Yeah,
saw quite the number of messages.
Yeah.
That's it for this week's show. Quite a bit to talk about. Can't wait to have you back on the show, Chris. But before then, please let the people know where they can find you on the internet.
I am on Twitter tweeting quite a bit at Topher Nunes, TOPHERNUNES.
Awesome. That's been it for this week's show, guys. If you can, please follow us on YouTube. Search Controlled Interest will pop right up. Hit the subscribe button. Like the video if you enjoy the podcast. Hit the bell notification so you're notified when we upload the new podcast. YouTube sub boxes are pretty fickle, so you can't really trust them. On Twitter, you can follow me individually at Jared_. You can follow Dom at Dom's Oreos. Like Chris said, you can follow him at Topher Nunes. And collectively, you can follow us at Controlled Interest Abbreviated, which is at CTRLINT over on iTunes. If you leave us a review, it helps us move up in the algorithm. So if you're one of those listeners, definitely do that. And if you listen on Spotify, thank you. I love us being on Spotify. Like I've said before, it's where I listen to podcasts. So I enjoy that we're able to have it on that service. And yeah, it's pretty much it for this week. We'll see what happens. Last week when we ended the show, we didn't know that we were getting Summer of Gaming and all of this stuff. So I'm pretty sure by this time next week, there'll be a bunch of things we didn't know about beforehand. Maybe that PS5 event gets, dated. Maybe the Xbox June event. We'll see. But until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.